about to begin. Guys, you ready? You ready to learn something? Let's get ready. Get ready.
Again,
Get set.
gather our comrades from the tunnels.
In the professional studios, they actually have like official like countdowns and all that stuff. We're not so professional yet, so we don't really have this official countdown where we actually go like 10, 9, 8, 7.
I could do it. 4, 3.
No, but you're saying that we're already live.
We're live. I'll tell you what, Rabbi.
We're already live.
I'll tell you what.
The people are watching us count down and talk about counting down.
I'll tell you what.
Anyways,
I'll
one.
get my shit up,
Yeah.
and then I'll move out of the sheeping apartment. I'll work full time.
Full time. You're going to be the full time producer. You're going to produce a massive program that we have here. All right.
We should get like a little sign that says live and just randomly you're live.
Yeah. There's like a room with studio and sound cancellation. By the way, anyone out there want to help us with maybe organizing this? Make us a little bit more professional. We'd be
Donate.
Be a guest at the show. You can have them
Yeah.
in and live.
So it was right, by the way.
yeah.
Yeah, why not?
All right.
$15 production value.
So
Make
Yosef Zor over here says
Make a live
that
video with you.
that what Yosef Zohar says that if anybody's going to help us make this a little bit more professional by donating $180, Yosef Zohar is going to organize a live one-on-one question and answer with me at some point. You're going to have to organize it. That's our offer right now. I'm not sure how we're going to do it, but we'll figure it out. We'll do it. It's not a big deal. We'll do it. We could do it. We could do it. We could do it. All right. Good. Anyways, for those of you just joining, we are basically speaking of how we are hoping to make this a little bit more professional someday, and we're looking for help. We have some in-house help. We have some out-house help. Baruch Hashem, thank you. We're appreciated. Now, let's before I get to our Gemara, okay? We have actually a lot of people here today on Facebook, and anybody that's on my Facebook knows that I put out a question today, and today I decided to put out my question somewhat relevant to our particular Talmudic study class. And I'm going to try doing that in the future. So many people have been complaining on Facebook that I put out questions and I don't explain why I'm asking the questions and I don't give any answers. People are complaining. So my answer to your complaint is come to the Talmudic class because I'm going to aim my questions relevant to the Talmudic class. And these questions are going to be dealt with and answered in the Talmudic class. All right, that sounds fair? Good deal? Yeah, good deal. All right. Now, my question today on Facebook is as follows. Why do people have such a difficult time retracting beliefs? What I mean by that is actually pretty straightforward. Okay? Many people, for whatever reason, they grab onto an assumption, they get a particular belief, and they hold on to it for dear life and they'll never relinquish it. It's almost like they feel that something is going to happen to them if they dare relinquish a belief and change their mind. Maybe they think that it's going to be some type of a terrible apocalypse if they dare change their mind and change their beliefs, right? That's unfortunately, you see that. As a matter of fact, when I was in New Zealand, I was approached by somebody who was Christian. Yeah, it's not the first time. It probably won't be the last. I have been approached by a lot of Christians before. Even on our live stream, we had a whole Christian debate over here, right? Unfortunately, or fortunately, depends who you ask. I should say, unfortunately for them, that they tried to debate me. Um, Anyways, this Christian in New Zealand said as follows. They told me as follows. They said, "What, you don't believe in so and so?" And I said, "Why should I believe in so and so?" So the person looked at me and she says, "What are you talking about? I believed in so and so since I was 12 years old." Right? As if like it's so obvious that even when I was 12, I figured it out. So I turned to the woman and I say, "Could you explain to me another understanding you had at 12 years old that you still think is accurate today?" And the woman had nothing to say. She could not mention a single belief, a single worldview, a single concept that she holds today dear to her heart that she actually developed or understood at 12, right? Now, except of course for this belief. Why? Because people accept of themselves a belief and they hold it for dear life, and they refuse to reconsider it.
I would say the opposite. If she grew up with a Christian kid, she should have been understanding like
Yeah,
Christmas, for example. What are you telling Christmas?
yeah.
Whatever
That what?
belief system you get from your parents is a
Yeah.
lie.
That's what they tell you.
Yeah.
All right.
First teach you this the Santa Claus, and tell you it's a lie. They teach you it from young on.
They teach you. They warn you in advance,
They're
right?
whatever gonna teach you, it's a lie.
They teach you that the biggest holiday in the Christian world, they teach you the concept of Santa Claus, which then you later figure out is a lie.
Exactly.
So if that's the biggest Christian holiday, maybe people need to reconsider that. Maybe the whole thing's a lie. Maybe that's the true. Maybe that's the true education. Is they're educating you young to teach you that we're a bunch of liars.
Exactly.
We actually enjoy lying, right? We teach the kids that this is something good, not just that they lie to their kids, is they want their kids to lie to their kids too.
Exactly. Yeah.
Anyways, it's a good point. It's a little bit of a what's that?
They pay off
Yeah.
the Jews leave in Egypt.
Yeah.
The kids are maybe like get a little older, like, nah, that never happened. It was you know?
Well, yes, obviously we don't do that, and I think it's important. Honesty, integrity is definitely important within that. Anyways, what I'm talking about is a very important point about people that they accept a belief. Usually, they accept the first belief that makes sense, and they refuse to let go of it. And as a matter of fact, this concept doesn't only exist in the religious world. This concept exists even in secular world, even in the scientific world, right? Very often they come up with an idea, they latch onto it like a crocodile. They latch onto it and they cannot let go of their belief that they've understood, even if they're proven wrong. Even in science, what do they say? They say in order for science to have a big breakthrough, you need all the previous generation science to die. Why? Because until they die, they're going to fight against a true, honest scientific breakthrough because they latched onto an idea and they hold onto it so tight, they refuse to reject it, they refuse to let go. Right?
So if you let it's their foundation. If you break the
Again, you're saying the foundation of science is meant to be that you're constantly developing knowledge, right? But there's a human tendency that once you accept that something is true, it's very difficult to let go of it, even if you're proven wrong. And I think that it is vital for human development. It's vital for humans to counterbalance this tendency. Now, I don't think you're going to get rid of this tendency in Judaism, and not in Judaism. I don't think you're going to get rid of the. I don't think you're going to get rid of this tendency within humanity. I don't think you're ever going to get rid of this tendency. This tendency is here to stay. Okay, people will always, the first thing they hear, the first thing they accept, they're going to latch onto it and they're not going to want to let go. However, you can fight that. You have the choice to fight that. When you hear something that challenges your belief, you have a choice to say, you know what, let's open up. And I'm not suggesting that you should accept, I'm not suggesting you should accept whatever the new idea is. You don't have to accept it, but you have to be open to it. You have to be open to it and listen to it. If it challenges you, consider it and see how it sincerely can develop your reality into a better form. The reason why I'm saying this right now, as I told you, this is actually a introduction to our Gemara today, is because in the Talmud very often it records assumptions, which you'll say, well, if we're going to conclude that that assumption is completely inaccurate, if we're going to conclude that the assumption is full of garbage and is not worth even talking about, right? Then why mention it to begin with? The answer is the Gemara is actually trying to train your brain. The Gemara is trying to train your brain that you're going to have an assumption and you're going to need to let go of it. It's almost as if the Gemara is trying to fix this human problem within its teaching, which in itself is a brilliance that you see in the Talmud, where it's trying to train your brain that you're going to first accept the concept, and then you need to be able to completely let go of that concept and accept something completely different. Right? And I'm going to show you how in our Talmud we have this very concept, how we're going to have an assumption, right? Which we're going to think is the obvious solution. which normally, according to human tendency, we would end up latching onto and never wanting to relinquish, and then we're going to relinquish it. So it's training your brain that sometimes you have an assumption, sometimes you have an idea that you grabbed onto, that you locked onto, and you must be able to let go. And that is the true way for you to develop. Okay, if you want to develop as a human being, this is a this is a necessary challenge that humans have. And again, humans have this challenge. In the Talmud, it actually says
You shouldn't get
when it comes to a judge, what's that?
I mean, you see the Gemara is that they let go, but they don't let go easy either. Like it's not like it's like okay.
Again, if they're proven wrong, they'll let go. Meaning, it's
If
not
it's
about.
if it's
And by the way, the Gemara never really latches on until there's proof. Meaning, if there's no proof,
yeah,
we do have sometimes that one person says an assumption without proof, and another person gives a counter assumption also without proof, and the Gemara will kind of conclude that neither of.
yeah.
Again, we don't really have in Gemara. There's no weaker or stronger. There's either proof or not proof.
Sometimes if you have like
Where?
proof, like say with suking, and then guy brings a counter proof, he only brings one pasuk or something.
I've never really seen that be a concept. Yeah. Anyways, yeah. Let's turn on a mic and then we'll pass it around to whoever's talking. Anyways, first of all, I want to say hi to Louise, who every single day she comes to the class and she says Boker Tov to me, and we're very happy to have her. And I want to remind you guys that this is an interactive class. You can, if you put in the comments a question, a comment, it will come up on my screen. And if I feel that it is relevant to our class, I will mention you and I will mention your comment. Um, Whatever, we're on a few different platforms simultaneously. Whichever platform you're on, you use your platform's comment section, and that is how you get a hold of me. Can you pass that tissue here? Tissue, yeah, just no, that the tissue, yeah, yeah, give me, yeah. Anyways, that's the way you can participate. I will mention to you, sorry, I will mention to you that if you are going to ask a question or give a comment during the actual main part of the class, it has to be relevant to the class, to the topic that we're discussing. We're not going to answer random questions to the rabbi during the main part of the class. Once we're finished the main part of the class, we open up. I will mention that you have questions and answers. At that point, you can ask whatever you want. It doesn't have to be relevant to the class, and we'll deal with it. Okay? But during the class, it's only if you're not understanding a particular part of what we're saying. Now, as it is Thursday, we have finished our Talmudic quota for the week already yesterday. And that's why on Thursday we usually do a synopsis. All right? We started off this week speaking about the shofar, the horn, the ram's horn that we blow on Rosh Hashanah, on the holiday, the Jewish holiday that's coming out exactly a week, well, 2 weeks from yesterday. 2 weeks from yesterday, which means, Wednesday. Wednesday, it's actually no, it's Wednesday. It's Tuesday night. We start Tuesday night into Wednesday. Yeah, yeah. No, not this coming one. The next one. Sorry, you're right. Wednesday night. I'm sorry, my mistake. Wednesday night. It's Thursday, Friday, Shabbos. Right, Thursday, Friday, Shabbos. So Wednesday night is going to be Rosh Hashanah, and Thursday morning we're gonna blow the ram's horn. Does anybody have a ram's horn here that we can have? When somebody want to get it so we can show people what it looks like, we have one here. We're going to show, he's going to bring a horn. We're going to show you what the ram's horn looks like. We already have it here. And if we have some time at the end, we might actually blow it for you. I do the blowing sometimes. Somebody, huh? When you're not Yotze, you're not fulfilling the obligation. But during Elul, before Rosh Hashanah, then it's only symbolic. So it's not really a mitzvah. If you could hear it from an actual shofar the whole month before, it is good. If you cannot hear it from a shofar the month before, then you might hear it here online. It might be something good to remind you, to stir up your heart, to connect with God on a deeper level. And on Rosh Hashanah, for those of you who are Jewish, should definitely visit a synagogue on Rosh Hashanah. Oh, here we go. This is a horn that we have in the yeshiva. This is I actually believe this is not a ram's horn, just on the shape. I think it is a goat's horn. Okay, I think it's a goat's horn based on the shape. I've seen a lot of different shofars, and therefore it is. As a matter of fact, we're going to learn next week that this shofar is actually not kosher because it has a crack here. I can see the crack in there. It's crack. No, that's fine. You want to do a month of Elul. What's wrong with the month of Elul? We should also try to do things right. Yeah. Anyways, so we are discussing the rules of the shofar. as we're going to discuss, there are different opinions what type of horn we should use, etc. Okay? In the Mishnah, we had a discussion. Some people said in Rosh Hashanah we use the Irax horn. The Irax horn is a horn, Irax, I think.
No,
Ibex?
that's
Irax?
dinosaur.
Yeah.
No, T-Rex.
The dino horn, the T-Rex is not
Yeah,
a
the
T-Rex. T-Rex was the guy. You think I don't know about dinosaurs?
Ibex.
Who do you think invented dinosaurs?
Yeah.
Some Jewish
Yes, they-
atheist that wanted to
You're
he wanted to prove the Torah wrong, so he invented a whole thing, dinosaur.
And you
Yeah.
hit all those.
There you go.
You went to hit all those
Let's
bullets.
we'll give a quick blow. We're not going to blow the full thing. We'll give a quick blow just so you hear the sound. I'm not sure how it's going to come out through our microphone, but here you go. And by the way, what people in this class we saw this yesterday, is that if you really know how to blow this well, you can actually make a tune, right? You actually make a tune with the shofar.
But you know what?
All right? We're going to do that very quickly as well. That's it. All right?
How did they-
Everybody's here like, what? You can do that with a shofar? Many people don't know that you could actually do that with a shofar. You can blow it like a horn. It's not easy. You basically, it has to do with frequency, right? The more, when you blow into the shofar, you're actually creating the vibrations, right? And the quicker the vibrations, the higher the pitch. The slower the vibrations, the lower the pitch. So if you're able to change the speed of your own vibration, because you actually put it to your mouth just like a trumpet, you go, you make the vibration just like a trumpet, right? If anybody blows trumpet, you know what I mean, right? And you make the vibration into it. If you speed up the vibration, you'll get a higher tone. And if you slower the vibration, then it comes out as a lower tone. And if you're able to change it, that's actually how you're able to blow the shofar and make a tune out of that shofar.
Like some
Anyways,
Show me you're not allowed to do this. Or what should-
well, Rosh Hashanah, I mean, you're supposed to be blowing it somewhat simply. You're not supposed to be making music.
It's not our responsibility to show.
You're not allowed to what?
To make any tunes with the show or with songs.
Again, you cannot, when you make the tunes, very often you have to stop and start. You can't stop and start, right? Could you not change the tones? I don't see why. Why can't you change? Again, there's nothing against changing the tones of the shofar during Rosh Hashanah. No, right? However, there's more of a beat. On Rosh Hashanah, there's a beat that you have to do. Do, 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 do.
Yeah.
Do, 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 do. So there's the beats that you have to do on Rosh Hashanah, but there's no tones. Now, if you decide you want to do a tone, I don't see why that would be an issue. Maybe it is, but I don't see why that would be an issue, etc. All right. Now we had a discussion between two rabbis whether you blow an Irax horn or an Ibex horn, whatever you want to call it, or if you can blow, or if you should blow the ram's horn. So that's the choice. Now I want to remind you. I want to remind you that in a previous class, we actually taught that all shofars are actually kosher for Rosh Hashanah.
Any animal.
Any animal. As a matter of fact, the only animal that was excluded was of a cow. And even then, there was a dispute. There was a dispute whether or not you could use a horn of a cow. We had the Chachamim and Rabbi Yossi. The Chachamim said you're not allowed to use a cow. Rabbi Yossi said you are allowed to use a cow. Now, I want to mention that many of you completely missed this. No one over here asked me, hold on a second, we just told you could use any shofar. Now we're telling you should use, now we're telling you, we didn't even say that. We didn't say a kosher animal. We didn't say that. Elephants don't have horns. By the way, as far as I know, only kosher animals, but it's not a horn. Only kosher animals have natural horns, from what I understand. From what I understand, only kosher animals have actual horns. Horns means that it's naturally. No, they have this big thing that sticks out, but it's not a horn. A horn basically means that you have this growth of the animal that inside of it has like a cartilage, and all you have to do is pull out the cartilage and you have this hollow horn, right? As far as I know, only kosher animals have that. The rhino, they have some type of a thing. It's like an elephant. It's a solid, it's like a tooth. It's a solid piece. It's not naturally hollow. As far as I know, only kosher animals have naturally hollow horns. Yeah. But don't, what I'm surprised with all of our great Talmudic scholars over here, no one bothered asking the question. We learned last week that you could use any shofar except for an ox. Now we come and we tell you that you have to use on Rosh Hashanah, you have to use either a ram's horn or an ibex horn, one of the two, right? And there's a dispute, one of the two. Now it sounds like we're limiting it to one horn. In the last Mishnah, we seemed like we were letting you do whatever you want. Here, we limit you only to one horn. So, no. Again, there's a dispute which horn you're supposed to use. That there is. Okay? There's a dispute which one of the horns you have to use.
Okay.
But it limits it, according to each opinion, you have to use a specific horn.
Okay.
Right? So how does this not contradict the previous Mishnah?
Good question.
Good question. Anybody has an answer? Remember, you could question, you could answer online. You just put it in your what do you put it in the comment section. All right. Anybody have an answer to that? Please, we would love to hear. Anyone else? Anybody here? How do we deal with this? In last Mishnah, we tell you could use whatever horn you want. This Mishnah, we tell you a very specific horn. Seems to be a clear contradiction. To me, at least, that's what it seems like. Yeah. Anybody? No one thought about this. Where's your Talmudic brains? In the previous Mishnah, we said you could use any horn you want, and then there was one opinion that says you cannot use a cow's horn. You can use any horn you want except the cow's horn. In our Mishnah, we tell you need to use a specific horn for Rosh Hashanah. Meaning, again, there's a dispute which specific horn that is, but each one has a rule of which horn you have to have.
So what's the question?
That's the question. In the previous Mishnah, we tell you can use whatever.
Why is that the case?
It's a contradiction.
What's missing is laughing details.
In the previous Mishnah, we say you could use whatever horn you want.
She's referring to two different situations. Must be referring to two different things.
What is it referring to? They're both referring to the same blowing of Rosh Hashanah. The same blowing of Rosh Hashanah. There's no difference. What's the difference?
There's got to be a difference.
Of course, you're saying there's got to be a difference. I agree with you. The Mishnah did not contradict itself.
So what is the difference?
That's it. As I said, obviously the Mishnah didn't just contradict itself in its face, right? Okay. Well, obviously that's an obvious statement. Obviously, we didn't contradict ourselves within a couple lines. The question is, why isn't that a contradiction? So there's actually discussion. There is discussion. The discussion is a little bit more in the Tosfos, but there is a discussion that we're basically referring to. We're referring to a preference. We're not referring to a law, we're referring to a preference. This is actually very common in Talmudic thought, in Talmudic teaching. Very often we have one rule that this is an obligation, and then we have another rule which is a preference. Preference means that you should do it, but if you can't, or if you don't, you still fulfilled your obligation.
Lashon of preference there?
Huh? What do you mean lashon? Again, there is no lashon. The wording over here sounds like it's completely contradictory. However, we're saying it's not contradicting, meaning in our Mishnah, we're not talking about your obligation, which means you're not obligated to use a ram's horn or an ibex horn. This is just what you should be using, and perhaps what horn was used in the temple.
You already said it, though.
What did we already say? Who said it's a preference?
That there's different opinions. As a preference.
No, again, in the last.
You're only going to use one. Oh, like, okay, I'll get you. Okay, sorry.
In the last Mishnah, we said you could use whatever you want except for one. In our Mishnah, each opinion is arguing which one you have to use.
Okay.
You understand?
Yeah. Yes.
According to last Mishnah, you could use everything except for one. And according to our Mishnah, you have to use only one and nothing else.
Yes.
It's a big difference.
With a different opinion, which one it might be, and you say it's a preference. Okay, you say that.
So we're saying that our Mishnah is more of a preference, what you should prefer to use versus what you're obligated to use. Okay, it's a big difference. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
Good. All right. Now, we had the different opinions. We went through the reasoning of those two opinions. The reasoning was because on Rosh Hashanah, one opinion says it's better to be bent over, which is a symbol of humility. And the ram's horn is bent. The ram's horn is bent over, and the ibex horn is very straight. Ibex is straight up. And since the ibex horn is straight up, it symbolizes like pride. It's like pride. So some people say that on Rosh Hashanah, you should have somewhat of a pride or really what it says is kind of looking up to heaven. You should proudly look up to heaven to connect with God as King. A lot of people actually make this mistake. They think Rosh Hashanah is a sad day and it's all about atoning for your sins. That's actually not true. Rosh Hashanah is actually a holiday where we're meant to be crowning God as King, where we're meant to be connecting and appreciating our connection with God as our King. It's not about judgment, even though we believe that it is the day of judgment as well. God judges us on the day of Rosh Hashanah. We do believe that, yes. However, that's not the main focus of the day. The main focus of the day is the fact that we're connecting with God. All right?
Is je focus op die dan not zo veel zo op Shoshana?
Says who?
Leef je iets, ik weet niet.
No, so it's not a Rosh Hashanah. The concept is to be happy and to be excited and to be confident in the fact that we did connect with God, and therefore, because we connected Him properly, He judged us. He also judged us favorably. Right. As a matter of fact,
Shows where we should go.
the more Kabbalistic, you want to listen to some Kabbalah. Some people around the world in Kabbalah. In Kabbalah, God, we say in Rosh Hashanah, God judges us, right? God judges us, and He determines whether we live, whether we die, whether we're rich, whether we're poor. On that day, He decides, right?
We go again.
Now, Kabbalistically, the day of Rosh Hashanah is all about us connecting with God and God connecting with us, right? Now, when we're connecting with God, we want God to say, yes, I really like this guy, right? I really want to connect to this guy. So if we're connecting with God, He'll connect with us. And this is when God pretty much decides, okay, so I want to be your God for the rest of the year. Right now, of course, God made you who you are. And if God decides that He doesn't like who you are, what happens? You're gone.
Do the new.
Done. Yes, finito petito. I don't know where that word comes from, but it sounds good. Finito petito.
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 Bepito.
Yeah. Petito.
I don't know what that. Bepito. Is that
Petito.
Bepito? What's that? Is that actually a word? Is that a Spanish word? You know, Spanish.
Spanish cartoons from my childhood.
Less how do you say? I don't speak Spanish. Less más español, something like that. Les hablas.
Yeah,
Hablas. Les hablas. All right. No Spanish over here. We're an English speaking program. That's it. All right. Okay, so we pretty much got to that. We had a very short discussion about the fact that in the temple, these shofars had a gold plating to them. We asked, well, hold on a second, you can't have a gold plating because if your mouth must touch the shofar itself, and since your mouth must touch the shofar itself, you cannot have the gold plating all the way to the mouthpiece. And we basically said, yes, in fact, the shofar was not gold plated all the way to the mouthpiece, but just before the mouthpiece. And therefore, the person blowing the shofar was actually only touching the shofar directly. He was not touching the gold. When he was blowing the shofar, he was not blowing. He was, again, when you are blowing a shofar, your mouth must be directly touching the shofar. Your mouth cannot be the
mouthpiece.
Yes, there can't be a mouthpiece on here. And by the way, if there was ability to have a mouthpiece, it would be so much easier to blow the shofar because they make these little things that you could stick in there and you blow it and it does the vibrations for you. Instead, we have to do the vibrations with our mouth, which is much more difficult. And that's why people find it extremely hard to blow shofars. They find it very difficult.
Do you know why in Chabad Dafka they don't want to have anything on it? That's been no gold piece on it.
I'm not sure. There's a concept, maybe because that's the way it should be in the temple and not, Also, there's a concept that the shofar represents some level of humility. Okay, humility. You hear that? Humility. All right. As a matter of fact, it's said one of the reasons why we don't blow a metal shofar, even though a metal shofar looks fancier, is because if we're approaching God and saying, "Look at us, God, we're so fancy. Look at us, God. We just built you a beautiful golden shofar." You're actually showing some arrogance, and the shofar is something that God made. So there's no arrogance in the shofar. Who made this? God made this, right? God made the shofar. It's a natural animal. So therefore, we're showing some humility that we're not showing off about our creation, but we're trying to connect with God as our creator. All right? Good. Now, the next part is really what I gave the introduction about. The next part of the Mishnah is where we had a hypothesis and where we see assumptions. It's very important to know this. It's very difficult when people don't realize that the Gemara literally makes an assumption and then retracts its assumption, and people got confused in previous classes with that. But that's exactly what happens over here. We start out as follows. We start out with the question about in the temple, they blew horns and the shofar simultaneously, which means that it seems like people had to hear the shofar, right?
Through the other sound.
Exactly. They had to hear two sounds simultaneously, and they had to pay attention to the shofar because the mitzvah, the commandment, is to hear the shofar blowing and not to hear
The trumpet.
the trumpet,
Mitzvah,
right?
but not either.
No, it's a mitzvah, but it's not the main mitzvah of
Yeah.
Rosh Hashanah. You must hear the actual horn. You cannot hear the trumpets, right? So then we said, okay, well, if that's so, our first assumption number one is that you cannot hear two voices at once, and we even brought a verse from the Torah to suggest that you cannot hear two verses at once. So that's assumption number one. Again, the Gemara comes up with that assumption that you cannot hear two noises at once. Okay? As somebody said over here, maybe you hear it, but you hear it as both of the noises
New sound.
together, which means it's like a mix. For example, if you mix blue and green, what do you get?
Blue and green, you get.
No, if you bring no yellow and blue, I think.
Blue.
Yellow and blue, you get green, right? If you mix yellow and blue, you get green. You don't get a little bit of yellow and a little bit of blue, you get green, right? So seemingly the assumption here is that when you're hearing two sounds, you're kind of morphing the two sounds into one sound. And since you're morphing the two sounds into one sound, you're not hearing either sound independently. That is an assumption that the Gemara started out with, and it even brought a proof to its assumption from the fact that it says in the time of Mount Sinai, we heard two things at once, something that is miraculous, which is something that normally cannot be done. If normally it cannot be done, proves that it can't be done on a normal basis. It only can happen in a miraculous way that you could hear two sounds simultaneously and independently of each other, right? So we brought that. So again, it's assumption number one. We even brought a two proof to that. Now, once we brought that as a proof, we said, well, if we're going to say that you cannot hear two sounds at once, we must then say that you could hear part of the shofar blowing and you could actually fulfill your obligation by hearing part of the shofar.
The end. We're talking when we say part now, we mean the end.
Correct, the end, right? The end, which was extended so you could hear part of a sound, and since you're hearing part of the sound, thanks for reminding me, it said that when they blew the horns and the shofar, the horns would stop earlier and the shofar would extend. So therefore, if you cannot hear two things at once, which means you're not yotza hearing the shofar, if you heard it together with the horns, you're not yotza, you're not fulfilling your obligation, right? Now, what happens if you heard the extension? Well, now you fulfilled your obligation because you heard the extension. But the extension was only a part of a blowing, and it was not a complete blowing. And so, therefore, the Gemara is saying that if assumption number one is you cannot hear two things at once. That's assumption number one. Assumption number two is that if you cannot hear two things at once, the only way that you can fulfill your obligation is by hearing part of a sound. And if you could hear part of a sound, well, if you could hear the end part, well, seemingly you could also hear the beginning part. Now the Gemara is going to take these two assumptions, which are intertwined. They're now intertwined, these two assumptions. And now we're going to challenge the conclusion of these assumptions, right? And the challenge was because we said if you blow one long blow, you're not fulfilling two blows, even if one is as long as two blows or as long as 10 blows. You're not yotze. You only fulfilled your obligation for one blow, right? Which means that you cannot hear a fraction of a blow. Because if you could hear a fraction of the blow, well, why don't we split that blow into two or three parts, and then each one is considered its own blow?
You can do with your ears also. You can do the tkiya.
You can do what?
You do tkiya, and I can do the ear. I can do the
Yeah. Yeah, you can do the whole. There you go. You can do it with your ear. Go ba 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 ba.
Yeah.
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 Right? Again, you should be able to do that if hearing part of a sound counts.
Yeah.
Right? So that's our current assumption. And now we challenge that assumption. Okay, we're challenging that assumption. Challenge that assumption by telling us that if somebody blows into a pit and they're hearing if they hear the echo, they are not fulfilling the obligation. They must hear the direct sound and not the echo bouncing back. But then we said, well, if you're hearing the sound, at least you heard the sound before it echoed, right? Before it echoed, you heard the sound.
So it means it would be more moeder to have a soundproof room than like the case of chauffeur.
A sound absorbing room, not a soundproof room. Soundproof room means that sound can't come in. Again, there's soundproof rooms where sound can come in, and then there's rooms that are meant to cancel out any. You have like these pads. They have these pads on the wall. They have pads on the wall, and these are made to absorb the sound, so you don't have any echoes.
We need to build that.
There you go. You have your job cut out for you. I'm gonna see this guy's gonna come in Rosh Hashanah. All the walls of yeshiva are gonna be patterned. We're gonna hear the pure shofar sound without any type of no bouncing, no echo, no nothing. Straight shofar. That's it. All right. Okay. So again, from there we just disproved the fact that you could hear part of a blow, right? Seems like you can't hear part of a blow. Right? So what we basically concluded here is that you could, yeah. So we concluded is that what we said you could not hear two sounds simultaneously, you cannot hear two sounds coming from one source. But you could hear two sounds coming from two different sources.
And the echo is considered from the one source.
Huh?
The echo is considered still from the one source, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't call it.
No, correct. The echo is coming from the same source as the other one. So if you hear two sounds from the same source, you don't hear it properly. If you're hearing two sounds from different sources, you could. Right? Now you have to realize that by saying that, we just canceled half of our assumption. Our original assumption, remember, we had two assumptions.
Yes.
Assumption number one is that you cannot hear two sounds at once.
We solved this now.
Assumption number two was that you could hear part of a shofar and not the other part.
Yeah.
We just canceled both of them. So we first assumed that was true. No, we canceled both of them.
Because
we basically said you could hear two sounds, but only from
two different people.
And since there's two different people, one blowing the trumpet and one blowing the horn, therefore you're okay.
Yes.
Right? So you could hear two sounds from two different people, but not from one. Yeah?
How did you cancel the second one?
The second one was that you could hear part of a sound and not the other part. The answer is no, you can't. You have to hear the whole sound. You have to hear the sound from the beginning to the end.
How did you cancel that?
Huh?
How did you cancel that?
Because otherwise, if you blew into the pit, right? Why would you should be Yotza the second you heard the beginning, before the echo came. Since you're not Yotza because you didn't hear the beginning before the echo came, that proves that you cannot hear part of a sound. So the Gemara started out with two assumptions, two beliefs, and it was able to deviate and show that these beliefs are in fact not true.
With the echo is because it's from the same source. Can't I say the problem with the echo is not because it's only a party's hearing,
because what?
One source. The problem with the echo is because it's coming from one.
So what? But at the end of the day, before the echo started, you heard part of the shofar without the echo. What comes first, the sound or the echo?
But what's the case?
What comes first, the sound or the echo?
If you're there from the beginning, the sound.
The sound comes before the echo. So since the sound comes before the echo, so you heard a little bit of the sound before you heard the echo, and that should be good enough. Because if you could hear part of a sound, well, you heard part of the sound.
Continued everything. No?
Doesn't make a difference.
You can keep on listening to the original sound.
No? Again, each time you're hearing each time you're hearing the sound before the echo. Whenever a new sound starts, you're hearing the sound before the echo. Right? But since that we said that you're not Yotza, you did not fulfill your obligation, therefore that threw out our second assumption. We started out with two assumptions. We tried to fight to hold on to those two assumptions, which, as I told you earlier, is the nature of human beings. We latch onto the first assumption we hear, we latch onto it, we don't want to let go, and we fight it, but at some point we need to be able to let go when we are proven wrong. And this is not easy. This is a piece of human nature that people really need to fight. It's not an easy thing. I've experienced this in my own life. I've seen other people that had a really hard time letting go of their own beliefs, even when proven wrong. It's very, very difficult, but you have to be willing and capable of doing that when in fact something is presented to you that proves a belief wrong, you have to be you have to be ready and willing to let go.
Amazing.
You have to do it. That's just the way it is. It again, it's one of the challenges of humanity. We have Darwood Al Kabir. Is that you? Rasul Allah. Rajul. Is that you? Is that you? It is you? We have a guy, Baruch Hashem, coming in with the best comments. Right here. Anyways, that is a synopsis. How are we doing on time? That is a synopsis. Listen, guys, that is a synopsis of this week's Gemara. Okay? Now, you guys, I want to remind you it's extremely important that you go over these details in the actual words of the Gemara, which is the main and most important part of this program, at least for the guys sitting here in live, that you should read it in the Gemara yourself and understand it from the words. You're going to see details that you might have missed from me. You're going to understand it better, and you're going to understand how to learn Talmud in the future because you're going to have the Gemara in front of you. Right? Good. Now, anybody that wants over here, that's in this class, if you want, you can go right now and study it. We will be testing starting from about 12:30. I'll be calling people over to read to me the Gemara and see if they know it. Okay? And anybody that wants to stay for the questions and answers is also welcome to stay for the questions and answers. As I mentioned online, right now, the official Talmudic class is complete, and how some people come. I've noticed that I start getting views at the end of the class. There's some people that they only come at the end of the class because they want to just stay for the questions and answers, right? But now's that time. So if you want to ask a question, anybody in the class or online, you can ask a question. If you're in the class, all you have to do is open your mouth. If you're online, it's a little more difficult. You actually have to go to the comment section and type in your question or your comment in the comments, and that's actually how we'll get to the questions. Remember, this is a live interactive program. As long as you are as long as you're here now and not watching a replay, you literally type in a comment, and if it's a question, something relevant, we will mention it. Please use that choice or that ability that we've given you, that you could actually put in, type in a comment, a question, etc. Anybody here in the class have a question?
I can say ask whenever I want.
Yeah, that's what I said. Now, right now, it doesn't have to be.
anything to ask.
Right now, it does not have to be on topic. It could be off topic as well. Any question you have to sit down. I don't take questions from people standing in my class.
Only when you're
Sit down. Yes.
Off
Right.
Oh,
Here you go.
hello.
What's your question?
So I'm just learning halachos of Sukkot,
Yeah.
and there's a difference of opinion between two Tananim
Yeah.
about what exactly does it mean in the verse that Hashem said that I commanded you to live in the sukkah, therefore you should build them for like future generations.
Right.
And so the disagreement is between Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Akiva says that actually the Bnei Israel physically built the sukkah in the
Right.
desert. And the other Rav, I think it's Rabbi Eliezer, says actually they were the clouds of glory. And I was wondering, what is the spiritual significance between the two differences of opinion?
Oh, very good. Great question. Thank you. All right, great question. I think it's important. To properly understand the opinions that you mentioned. Okay. The argument is, what was the main reason for the Sukkot holiday, right? I don't know what they call it in English. They call it tabernacle, the festival of tabernacles.
Yeah.
Festival of Tabernacles.
No, what is it called?
I do remember that from Christian
Yeah,
school.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Sukkot, when we build the sukkah, right? There's a dispute. What is the reason? Right? Some people, there's one opinion that says it is because God protected us with the clouds of glory that surrounded us from all sides. There's another opinion is that in the desert we were constantly living in temporary shelters. We would build these temporary shelters, and then we'd have to take them down because we would travel, and then we'd build them again. We never lived in permanent homes throughout the entire 40 years of the desert, right? So that is actually the dispute. Okay. The dispute is not whether or not we had those temporary shelters. Everybody agrees that there were Jews that the Jews in the desert never built permanent houses. They always had temporary shelters because they knew that they had to move. There's no dispute that there were clouds of glory and that these clouds of glory surrounded and protected the Jewish people throughout the 40 years of the desert. There's no question about it. Those are not disputed. The question is what is that holiday commemorating? Which one of these two realities is the holiday commemorating? Spiritually, this has a tremendous significance, right? The significance of this spiritually is that are we celebrating God's efforts, or are we or are we celebrating the human struggle? Okay, what are we focused on? Are we focused on remembering our struggle and our sacrifice and our challenges that we went through in order to become a nation? Or are we focused on God's miracles that made up a nation? Now, Passover, obviously, we're celebrating God's miracle for taking us out of Egypt, right? However, during the time of the tabernacles, that's the question: are we celebrating God's miracles, or are we, or is God wants us to remember our struggle and our effort and our challenges? And both of them are very important, because you have to realize a lot of people that are spiritual, they basically like escaping this reality. They like living in a la la land, right? Right?
Yeah.
Some people in America they say kumbaya. You ever heard that? Kumbaya? Kumbaya. Yeah. Right? Now you have to realize that spirituality is extremely infused in reality. Right? True reality and spirituality are fused together. They're not independent realities. If you need to leave this realistic world, if you need to leave this realistic world in order to connect with the reality out there, you're actually not connecting to authentic spirituality, at least in the right way that you should.
Rambam says we should go to Midbarot and
Yeah, you should or shouldn't. I said you should or shouldn't.
shoot.
Again, temporarily.
She totally messed up. Go
Yeah,
to the
that,
desert.
yeah. If your generation's messed up and you feel that you're going to sin, then get away from society. Yes, but that is only in an emergency situation. That's not what you're meant to do. The truth is that true spirituality is when it infuses your life, it builds your life, it helps you connect with other people, it helps you enlighten other people, it helps you bring godliness to this world. We say in Judaism, we're not. It's not about bringing. It's not about going to heaven. It's about bringing heaven down to earth, right? And that's actually a part of this argument between Rabbi Akiva and the other rabbis is what are we celebrating in that holiday? Both of them are important. Neither the rabbis are not suggesting that it's not important to remember the struggles we went through. That's not what they're saying. The question is, what are we celebrating, right? Which aspect, which focus, which perspective are we celebrating on that holiday? That's really the question between the two rabbis. Yes. Any other questions? Remember, if you're online, all you have to do is put it in your comments, a question, a comment, and we'll deal with it. Any questions? It does not have to be on the topic. It could be any question on any topic. If you feel that I should be answering that question, I will attempt to answer that question. It's very easy. All you have to use is your keyboard and you type it into the comments, right? And that's that. And by the way, guys, if you did not yet subscribe to my YouTube channel, I don't know what you're waiting for. What are you waiting for? Do it already. Just hit subscribe, hit the bell, doesn't cost anything, and then you get reminded every time I upload a video or if we go live. Very, very important to me and to you that you hit subscribe right away. If you're not, by the way, some people they see the subscribe, they hit subscribe, they don't realize they're unsubscribing, right? It actually, if you have to, YouTube is YouTube is actually very tricky. First, it says subscribe, right? And then once you subscribe, it says subscribed with a D. It's only an extra D. So if it says subscribed, don't hit it because then it will unsubscribe you. Only if you're. I'm telling you, it's the most confusing thing I've ever seen. If again, yes, I think it's red versus black also. If it's red, then if you're red, you're not subscribed. If it's black, you are subscribed. But it actually says one says subscribe and one says subscribed. If it says subscribed with a D at the end, then don't hit the button because then you're unsubscribing. Right. Yeah. Anyways, anyone over there outside, I see quite a few people here online on our various different platforms. If any of you guys have a question that you want to ask, this is your chance. You can ask a question live and we'll try to deal with it. All right. If not, we're going to close the session. We'll give you about another 30, 40 seconds to type. There is a bit of a delay, and that's why it might take a few seconds till I get the question. But yes. Anyone? Anyone in class want to ask a question? David Tambolsky. What are you watching over there? What are you watching over there? Nothing. No. What's your crazy discovery? Oh, we actually said we're going to blow the shofar. We actually said we're going to blow the shofar. We're going to blow the shofar in a moment, yeah? What do they make? What is that? Oh, chitas. So what's that? What is it? Yeah? Huh? I heard about that. Yeah, Schottenstein did. Yeah, I heard about that. I heard they were making it. I didn't hear they made it. All right. As we promised, we actually have one of our favorite guests over here, Talmudic Tom, right? Talmudic Tom's back, right? He comes every day. He comes, right? Baruch Hashem. He has a great question, and we're going to get to that question. But first, we promised people we're going to blow the shofar, so we're going to blow the shofar. And anybody else wants to ask a question, you have all this time to type your question, and we might deal with it. Okay, ready to blow the shofar? All right, this is a real shofar, real deal. Listen carefully. All right. And now we go to Talmudic Tom's question. He actually asks, "What is the history of the Magen David?" That's actually a brilliant question. It's a brilliant question, and it is actually one of the real massive mysteries of the Jewish people. As a matter of fact, the Magen David, you can find it in a lot of Muslim mosques, the old ones, the old ancient Muslim mosques, they have it. Why? Because at some point some form of Muslim symbol. It was a Jewish symbol at some times. And the fact is, some people call it the Magen David, which literally means the shield of David. Some people heard this myth that they found the shield of David and it had the star on it. It's actually not true. There was never a discovery of a shield of David that had the star of David on it. Never happened. He might have had a shield. Who says he had a shield? Again, you decided that. I don't know. He could have had a shield, right? But there's no evidence to say that David's shield actually had the Magen David. The question really is what it is about. And I'm going to tell you, if I have an hypothesis. It's not really. I've never seen this written inside, and I'm about to share with you an hypothesis. What I think is the source of this. All right. When the Romans came into the temple and to destroy it, they went into the Holy of Holies, and it says that in the Holy of Holies there was the cherubim, the kruvim, which was male and female, and they said that the male and female normally they were facing each other. In this particular case, they were interlocked into each other. They were kind of giving each other a big hug. And it says that the Romans would actually make fun of the Jewish people that we were worshiping sexuality. That was what we were worshiping because we in the Holy of Holies we had this male and female embracing each other in the Holy of Holies. And I think, and the fact is that the Romans very often tried to insult the Jewish people, at least in the earlier days. As a matter of fact, you want to hear something interesting? The name Palestine that we hear today all the time, Palestine, the name Palestine was actually when the Romans kicked the Jewish people out of Israel, when they destroyed the Second Temple, they wanted to insult and to, how should I say, berate the Jewish people. The biggest enemies of the Jewish people were the Philistines, right? And so therefore they decided we're going to take the land of Israel and we're going to rename it by the name of the biggest enemy of the Jewish people, and that's why they called it Palestine. Until today it's called Palestine because, or the people that call it Palestine at least, It's based on the Romans, who, by the way, were Christian, that they named this place the Palestinian area. What's that?
Christian at the time yet, right? They weren't
I don't know. When the second temple was destroyed, they were not yet Christian.
pagans.
It was later. They were pagans. Anyways, so that is the history of the name Palestine, and you see that the Romans did a lot to try to break the spirit of the Jewish people. And since they made fun of us that the two that about the interlocking, I really think that the Magen David Edom actually represents sexuality. And I'll tell you why. Because in the Romans, if you had a V upwards represented a female, and a V upside down, like an A, represented a male. And if you put them together, you have a male and a female interlocking with each other, right? And so therefore, it is my hypothesis that the Magen David Edom actually represents a male and a female embracing each other, right? A male and a female embracing each other, which could even mean sexuality. Now, that being said, why was it highly accepted by the Jewish people? Why did the Jewish people accept it as their symbol? Because in Judaism, we actually believe that the connection between Jews and God are similar to that between a male and a female that unite. Just like a male and a female unite and become one entity, the whole point of our spirituality is that us and God unite as one entity, right? We unite with each other, we embrace each other as one entity, right? And therefore, in Kabbalah, by the way, and as a matter of fact, if you read Shir HaShirim, how do they call it in Israel?
Songs.
Song of Songs, but there's another word. Proverbs, I think, no?
No, it's called
No? No,
Proverbs.
no, there's also,
That was Mishlei from it.
no, Mishlei is probably, no. Song of, some people call it Song of the Song. There's another word, I think it's called Celestations. But whatever it is, that particular book of the Torah actually speaks a lot about a love. It sounds like a love story, but Kabbalistically, it's not. Kabbalistically, this is a description of the relationship between humans or people and God, right? So it could very well be that the Romans, to begin with, wanted to make fun of us, so they labeled us with the symbol of male and female interlocking with each other. Could be they did. And then later, the Jewish people are like, actually, this does represent what we believe. Because we're not just about serving God. We're not just about worshiping God. We're actually about uniting with God, connecting with God, and becoming one reality. Our reality and God's reality should interlock and intertwine, just like a man and his wife. So again, that is a hypothesis. I've never seen any proof to this. The proof that I have seen is that you see that the Romans tried to insult the Jewish people, to try to belittle the Jewish people. That we do have. And the fact that Kabbalistically, that the Jewish nation, our core belief is uniting with God as one, like a husband and a wife. Right?
For like sexual imagery inside the basic English and the Constitution.
What's that?
Like sexual imagery.
I don't know of any clear sexual imagery that was in the temple. I've never seen that. They might have said that because they spoke about male and female, but male and female doesn't mean that they were engaging in sexuality. No, they were just there. They were there, and as I said, like when the temple was destroyed, the male and the female were embracing.
Interesting. Okay.
Not that they were actually engaged in the act. No,
There's also
no.
it's the masculine and
Yeah. Masculine and feminine.
the masculine and feminine elements of
Yeah.
Hashem.
Yeah.
And there's also the five masculine sephirot, right? The five masculine sephirot and the five feminine sephirot, and like in Sefer Yetzirah, it talks about there's a position where they're united together, and there's a position where they're drawn apart,
Also,
right?
like back to back.
Right.
Yeah, but also each of the two cherubim represents
There is-
one
yeah.
cherubim represented five of the sephirot, and another cherubim represented the feminine five, masculine five, feminine five, and then within the ark underneath there was one tablet, or what would you call it?
Tablet.
There's one tablet that had the five positive commandments, another tablet the five negative commandments.
Actually, I
Right,
think they
is that-
both had all. I think they.
Both
No,
had-
actually, no. You're right. You're right. I think you're right. There's different opinions, but I think you're right. I think that they both have. Anyways, yeah. So that's pretty much the reality behind that. And again, you do see a lot of male and female getting together as a very deep spiritual symbolic concept. I will just throw in there, just so you should know, one of the massive differences between Christians and Jews in their way of thinking is that in Christianity they look at sexuality as this horrible sinful deed that happens to be necessary because as humans we can't handle not being sexual, right? As a matter of fact, I don't want to say this, but in the non-Jewish world, in the secular world, very often they talk about sexuality as dirty, like, oh, you're a dirty woman, right? Like in Judaism, it's actually the exact opposite. In Judaism, sexuality is considered the most holiest act. And that's actually why in Judaism there's so many rules about sexuality, because if you have something that's extremely holy, you want to do it right. You don't want to, you don't want to go in front of God and do crazy. Imagine you have this. Imagine you take the Bible, God forbid, and you wipe your butt with it after you went to the toilet. That's like, come on, that's disgusting, right? That's extremely distasteful and it's extremely insulting and disrespectful to God that you're taking the Bible and using it to, for such horrible things. So it's the same thing in Judaism. If you're having sexuality in the proper way and you're trying to build a family and you have a wife, it's actually considered the holiest and greatest things that you could do in life is actually sexuality. Now, if you're going to now go just play around with this, you're going to go be with every woman out there. You're just going to, go from one woman to the next. This is literally like taking God's holiest reality and wiping your tuchus with it, wiping your butt with the Bible. It's the same thing that if you're going to misuse your sexual urges and not use it the way God wants it to be used, right? Then that is horrible. That's a horrible concept, right? Anyways, I think that's enough to answer Talmudic Tom's question. If anybody else has a question, you might have another 30 seconds. We are running out of time. If you put in a question quickly, I might deal with it. Otherwise, we will call quits. Baruch Hashem. Thank you. By the way, I really appreciate the fact we have a lot of interaction over here. People that have come from all over the world. We found from Sydney, we had a Sydney, Australia, we had Hawaii, we have US, we have from all over the world. And you could actually help this program become bigger and better by sharing this with your friends, just even telling them. If you actually speak with your friends, I hope today some people that are on the phone, they're always on their phone, they never speak to friends. But if you do speak to friends, tell them about this. Tell them, come join the program, come ask your questions, come deal with it. There you go. Okay, we're gonna close the program. Thank you for coming. Have a great day.